Welcome. Today I will show you how to deploy Passhub with Azure using the Azure Marketplace. Now, Passhub itself is a cloud-based password manager that is secure using WWPass authentication. Now, as a business, there are a few different options you can use for Passhub. However, the two most recommended is either we may host it or you can have a locally hosted instance that you deploy yourself. In this video, we will be using Azure Marketplace to deploy Passhub for free. Now, if you would like, there is also some documentation you may read along with of how to deploy Passhub using Azure. However, we will continue. Now, beginning at the Azure Marketplace, from here there are different many applications that you can get. However, in this case, we are looking for Passhub, so we will search for that. And here we are. So here is Passhub for Business. And as you can see, it is free for no cost. However, you must pay for WWPass authentication, which is later down the road. For now, we will continue. You may click Get It Now and continue. And from here, Passhub will bring us to Azure itself. So now, as you can see, we're on azure.com in our tenant. And here, you can also look through the different ratings and other information. But for now, we will click Create, and now it'll continue. So here we'll be brought to the settings that we have to input for Passhub. And also Azure has a few of its own. So as you can see, here we are to create Passhub. And now it would ask us to use a resource group. So in our case, we will click Create New. And I will type in my company, Passhub. You can name it whatever you want. This is a collection of resources and items that Azure uses to combine everything. For example, Passhub. Now you can choose your region, and we will click Next. From here, there are a few options for Passhub, but not that many. The first is the admin, the Passhub admin username. This is what you use to log in. For example, I'll call it Passhub admin. However, you may use whatever you like. Here we have the admin password. This is also used for the same login. However, there are a few requirements. Uppercase, lowercase. It has to have a number, a special character, and at least 8 characters. And here is a confirmation. And continuing on, we have the subdomain of the website. So Azure automatically provides DNS for your virtual machine that Passhub will be hosted on. However, we still have to provide a subdomain for it. In our case, I will be using my company, passhub.eastus.cloudup.azure.com. So I can type in just my company, and Azure will automatically do the rest. Last but not least, we have the virtual machine type, and there are a few that we recommend: the B1MS, the B1S, the DS1V2, DC1SV2S. In our case, I would like to use the B1MS for a little extra power. As you can see, 2 gigs of RAM. And finally, the disk size. I would like to have 30 gigs. However, we recommend 60 gigs for passive installations. You are able to change it in the future through Azure. However, if you do not use a lot of resources in Passhub, 60 should be more than 5. Now we may continue on to the review and create step. And here it will let you know if any settings beforehand had any errors. As you can see, it's passed all validation. So now we may continue and press create. And here it is now deploying Passhub onto Azure. So as you can see, there are a few different resources that are being created. However, the main fact to know is that it might take about 8 to 12 minutes for Passhub to deploy. And I will see you then. One thing to note with Azure is that most of the time spent waiting for the 8 to 12 minutes is from Azure provisioning the resources and creating them themselves. So from here on out, it's just a little more waiting game. And there we have it. Azure has completed deploying. In this case, it was a little shorter of a time frame because maybe less people are using Azure in the day. So be warned. However, you only have to do this once, and that is it. Once it is deployed, it is finished. Now we may go to the resource group to quickly check. And as you can see, we're in the My Company Passhub resource group I created earlier. And here we have a few resources, and the main one is the VM. So now if you remember the DNS that we typed in, it was My Company Passhub. Here he is. .eastuscloudupazure.com. And now it should be ready to go. And as you can see, here we are. This is the message to us, the site administrator, that Passhub is not provisioned, that we must obtain a subscription from WWPass for their authentication. However, the issue is that we are currently still not secure as Azure does not provide an SSL certificate. So, for now, we will SSH into the machine. So here we are, and my login was Passhub admin, and I may use the same DNS that we provided earlier to log in to Passhub. Now, as your business, I understand this is a very long DNS to use. However, you are able to use aliases and CNAMEs with your DNS service onto Azure. For example, I can quickly show you that if we go to the Passhub Linux IP address, there are a few things you can do. The first is that you are able to use Microsoft's DNS zones. So for example, if you're using a DNS provider through Azure, you may go to configuration and add them right here. Create an alias record. As you can see, you have to choose your DNS zone. However, if you have an outside DNS provider, what you would use is change the IP address to be static. This will be a little extra costly. However, from here, you're able to add a CNAME to this DNS, and now it'll be very short to access Passhub. Let's continue. So now I will SSH into the machine, type in yes, so this is my login, and I will now type in the password I provided earlier. And it will ask me, would I like to run certbot to automatically receive an SSL certificate? In my case, I will say yes. However, some businesses would like to use their own, and that is perfectly fine. You type in no, great, done. Now it'll be installing certbot, which will be giving me a Let's Encrypt certificate for my company Passhub, eastuscloudupazure.com. And now I have a little bit more waiting to do. And here it will ask me for the terms of service. I will say yes. And now it is registering. And now we wait. And here we go. Now it is deployed. So I can go back to Chrome and I can reload the page. And as you can see, we now have SSL, HTTPS, and it is all good. So now we will continue and we have to go to manage.wwpass.com to obtain the subscription. So here we are in www.pass.com. I will click login and here we are. I have a cookie saved from last time, but I will quickly show you that this is the portal it will bring you to. And I have to use my WWPass Authenticator app on my phone to scan the QR code and log in. And this will be the same way to log into Azure. To Passhub. Now here we may click Add New Application, and this is to add a local instance of Passhub. So we begin with the domain name. For this, it is my company, passhub.eastus.cloudapp.azure.com. Even if you have an alias or CNAME, you must use the Azure provided DNS. Now I will click Add Domain, and here we will have to verify the domain. So in our case, our recommended method and the best method for Azure is using the HTTP verification. I have to create a file with these contents and add it to the Passhub server. So first things first, I will go into the Passhub server, and most of everything in Passhub is under the var www directory. As you can see, here is our Passhub Azure. So we may go into that directory, and here is everything. So what we can do now is I can copy this text file, and I will create a new text file here with the contents, And now, by creating it inside the Passhub Azure directory, it will be accessible to the outside. So now I can click Verify Domain. And now it'll validate that we own the domain, and it will continue. So now I have to generate keys for this DNS. So we are using Linux, Unix, and I will copy this here. And I will paste the command and to generate the keys for us. And now if you keep reading, this is to obtain the certificate from the WWPass authentication. And now as you can see, there are a few options. You can either create it normally, which is what we did, or you may encrypt it if you would like to transfer an encrypted version from the Azure machine to manage WWPass. In this case, however, I will just open the request. So my request, and I will copy the contents. However, you may also upload it if you would like. And I will add a description, right here and call it Azure. Great. Now submit. Now while this is issuing, we may go back to the Linux machine, and as you can see, it also created private key. This private key must be stored in the etc SSL directory for Passhub to see it and use it. So I will quickly go to etc. So yes, I will move the key to the etc SSL directory. Great. Now if you would like, also in the Passhub Azure config file, you may change where this is located. However, automatically it will bring it to the etc SSL directory. And now Passhub is finished. So it has given me a certificate. I will now copy this certificate and go into the etc SSL directory. And from here, I will make a new file, .cert. However, you also may download it and upload it. But in this case, I'm creating a new file and pasting the contents. You might have to run sudo based on who has permissions over what directories. And finally, you must change the owner of these files to www.data so that Passhub can see them. So I will do that. And as you can see, WWPass, there you go. Now, in this case, you will have to pay for the subscription. However, for now, as this is a trial account of mine, I have enabled it, and we are good to go. So now everything is done or managed, and we may go back to our Passhub and reload the page. And here we are. So now I may scan in using the app on my phone, and we should be good to go. And here it is, account activation. So this is the first part of Passhub, deploying it onto Azure using the Azure Marketplace.